Welcome to the Middlesex Moments Radio Show. I'm Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and joining me today is Robin Gilmartin, who hails from Houston, I just learned. And today we're going to be talking about veterans. Robin, why don't you just explain what you do at the Veterans Administration, and then we'll start talking from there.
Sure. I'm director of the PTSD Residential Rehabilitation Program at the Newington campus. We treat veterans who have chronic post-traumatic stress, otherwise known as PTSD, and they actually stay with us for about 13 weeks and receive intensive treatments for PTSD. We also help them a lot with preparing for work and preparing to return to college. Most of the veterans and service members, I should say also, because we also have some active duty men and women, most of them are recently returned from Iraq or Afghanistan. And many are recently discharged from the military and looking to make that transition into civilian life.
So, is there a certain kind of personality that is more prone to PTSD, or is it the person who develops this response to their experiences, or is it the experience that creates the post-traumatic stress syndrome? How do you diagnose it? How does that happen?
That's a great question. In terms of who may be prone to PTSD, it's complex. There are what are known as risk factors and what are known as protective factors. Protective factors include things like social supports, education, and understanding about events around the person, as well as about having difficulties with life events. And then risk factors include things like repeated traumas. So if a person undergoes repeated trauma, they're more at risk to develop post-traumatic stress. So it's not uncommon for the veterans we see to have had some trauma even prior to the military. And then for many who have experienced multiple deployments, they have trauma on trauma on trauma. And really anyone can develop post-traumatic stress. It's a disorder that arises directly out of life's experiences and that are traumatic. And traumatic experiences, you might guess, would include something that's life-threatening that produces a profound sense of horror, helplessness, and really overwhelms the psyche.
It's something that I think almost, at least certainly most of the people who I know, I'm not sure about the complete general population since I certainly don't know everybody. I think most people, though, are familiar with those initials, PTSD.
PTSD.
PTSD, post-traumatic, and I often have to say it out loud to make sure I've got it straight. So I agree with you that there are many events that would occur just as part of daily life as a civilian in this country that would create a trauma as well. Mm-hmm. But now we have this population of individuals that we've asked to fight wars for us who are coming back. And so when we come back, let's talk some more about some of the experiences you've had working with these individuals and what those of us here in the United States can expect to what we should expect to know and how we can help our brothers and sisters who are experiencing these effects of these wars.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, welcome back. I'm Anna Wasesha, the president of Middlesex Community College right here in Middletown, Connecticut. And with me today is Robin Gilmartin, who works with the Veterans Administration and with veterans who are experiencing post-traumatic stress syndrome. We were just talking over the break about repeated tours of duty, and I asked if the enlisted and the soldiers, if they get a chance to have a fixed period of time in between their tours, and you were responding by saying they don't really know how long that time might be.
Yeah, many of these men and women have multiple deployments. Often they don't know when or if they'll be redeployed until kind of they get called back.
Can I ask a clarifying question? In World War II, when you were drafted,
Mm-hmm.
it was for the duration.
It
But-
was,
But
yeah.
now, is there a 10-year window or a 6-year window when you might be redeployed? Is there some term that's assigned to their obligation to the military?
In Vietnam, enlisted men and women were sent for 12 months, 12-month tours to Vietnam, or if you were a Marine, 13 months. After which your DEROS date, which was your end date, you knew when you were going back to the States. And, some people feel that helped, and it makes sense, it helped those service members hang on, because they knew they just had to survive the 12 months, and then they would go back.
Right.
This war is so different because of the multiple deployments. And you can imagine when a service member returns home, not knowing if or when they'll be redeployed, there's that sort of sea bag in the corner that never gets unpacked, really, until they're discharged from the military, until they know for sure that they're not going to be redeployed. So it's so difficult not just for the service member, but for their families. Because not only does that sea bag not get unpacked, but they never are able to sort of, for lack of a better term, let their guard down and sort of reacclimate to civilian life, because they know they may have to prepare, they do have to prepare to go back. So in terms of being emotionally available to family members when you've had to kind of toughen up to get through what you've gotten through over there. So it's very very difficult for families. I think over the next 5-10 years, as researchers study the effects of these multiple deployments, I think we'll read and hear a lot about it. But very difficult.
Why do we have multiple deployments? Because we don't have enough people in the military to
That's correct.
to staff the effort.
Yeah, another difference, of course, is that we don't have a draft.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so there are fewer men and women who fight our wars
Right.
now.
How did you get drawn into this work?
I went back to school in my 30s and got a master's in social work, and I was fortunate enough to have a second-year internship at the West Haven VA, and I never wanted to leave. I hadn't really set out to work with veterans, but it's been a wonderful place to work.
Do you have veterans in your family?
I do, yeah. My father's a World War II vet. Uncles, of course, and
But
all my dad's friends, and
Sure. Yeah. Well, when we stop to think about it, we all have veterans in our families.
Oh, sure.
But it's still, it's so. And were you yourself in the military?
No,
No.
I never served.
No.
Yeah, so I guess I look on this as a way to serve those who served.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the things I think I was hoping we would talk about a bit today, which is how can we be helpful to individuals who are coming back from these wars?
Mm-hmm.
What just as regular people, what can we?
Sure.
How can we be sensitive to what's going on in their minds? And
Well, it sounds sort of corny or cliche, but it goes a long way to thank them for their service. It really does. And then beyond that, to just help in any way you can individuals and families who have sacrificed. I think if you're an employer, give them a job, give them a chance.
right.
Yeah, there's a high unemployment rate. And for returning service members, it's not easy making that transition, but they have a lot of service members, veterans have a lot of qualities that employers generally value a great deal, which is they know what teamwork's about. They have developed leadership skills. They've had a lot of responsibility. They often have just a strong devotion to the task at hand, the mission. So, translating that into the civilian sector is that they have a lot to contribute, a lot to give.
So when you were working with an individual who has PTSD, what is it that you're trying to strengthen? How do you, what's the process of trying to build back? Because you said initially that someone who has this profound sense of horror and it's helplessness.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to build back a sense of control over your life, or what are the kind of elements of rebuilding a strong person?
Well, control is that's sort of an operative word there, because it's, trauma by its very nature is something that's out of control, out of the individual's control, and often people with PTSD will try and I guess compensate or overcompensate and attempt to control or maintain at least a strong awareness of everything around them in order not to be blindsided, not to have something bad happen, which is out of their control. So that's where you see the kind of hypervigilance, that acute awareness of everything in one's surroundings. Because, God forbid, something could happen again. And, often they're very protective of those around them, family members in particular. They've seen the worst that can happen. They've seen, terrible things that people can do to each other. So the treatment, there are a number of, evidence-based treatments for PTSD that kind of work in different ways, I guess. What we provide is treatments that really focus on looking back over what happened, identifying thoughts or cognitions that may be somewhat inaccurate and may make it difficult for the person to move on. So, for instance, a traumatic event occurs, and often the service member will feel as though he or she should have been able to foresee it and prevent it from happening. And you can see why that occurs, because if you can prevent something horrible from happening, it means that something bad never has to happen again. So that's often, as humans, that's often kind of our default, because we want to think we're able to prevent bad things from happening to those we love. But the price for that is this terrible burden of responsibility. And so one of the ways we work with veterans is to examine some of those thoughts or cognitions, which may be flawed, and kind of hold the individual responsible for something that they had no way of foreseeing or preventing. So, and often it's necessary to revisit those events in order to be able to move on with one's life, because the guilt, for instance, can be crippling. So, and there are other ways we work. One of the things about post-traumatic stress is a lot of the symptoms are really fear-based. So the individual's fight or flight triggers off all the time. And these men and women spend a lot of, they're afraid a lot of the time. Afraid of crowds, afraid of unfamiliar settings, afraid of any situations where they can't have a sense of control, afraid of getting close to others again for fear that they'll lose that person. They've experienced a lot of traumatic grief. So there are a lot of fears, and we have a saying in our kind of a mantra in our program, which is lean into your fear, because in order to kind of reclaim your life as a civilian, you have to be able to do things again. And so we focus a lot on teaching anxiety management skills, ways of managing fear reactions, through breathing, through different techniques such as grounding, just reminding yourself where you are, self-talk, talking yourself through different situations, and slowly, the men and women learn these skills. They practice them out in the world, and slowly gain confidence in themselves, and a sense of mastery in using the skills, so that, for instance, when that fear kicks up, they don't have to head for the door. As president of community college, a veteran who has post-traumatic stress has to be able to sit in the classroom.
Right.
So it's pretty basic, but if you can teach them the skills to sort of slow their breathing down a little bit, be able to ride out the fear reaction, and remain in the classroom versus make an excuse and head for the door. That can be life-changing.
When we come back, we have to take a break, I'm sorry to say. I want to talk about that process of recovery. So we'll take a break now, and we'll be right back with Robin Gilmartin and talking about veterans today. Oh, welcome back. This is Anna Wasesha, Middlesex Community College, and I'm talking today with Robin Gilmartin from the Veterans Administration, and we've been talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. And I wanted to spend the remainder of the program talking about recovery. Because one of the reasons, of course, we're so interested in veterans on this campus is that we have so many veterans who are going to college here. And the ones I've met are wonderful, wonderful human beings. And I have a stepson who's a veteran of the first Iraq War, and they remind me so much of him that it brings back all kinds of memories of being a parent and being concerned about your child, and then hoping that they'll come back the person that you sent off in a way. So
if I can just jump
Sure.
in, Middlesex Community College is just so supportive of veterans. You all have that reputation, and I think you've kind of even upped the ante a little bit more in your recent tenure here. But it's a wonderfully supportive place. I was lucky enough to come over a couple of months ago and get a tour of the Oasis Center and meet some of the vets here, and you can really see and feel the support.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I want to make sure that it certainly as a president that I do everything I can to welcome the veterans back. But it's not just welcoming them; it's helping them recover, right? And also reinforcing the value of their own service, but the value of each individual person too. And I was going to ask you, as we were talking about this, so this is not about recovery. This is about the enormity of the problem, because I imagine everyone, even someone who goes overseas as part of a military deployment, who is pushing paper, if anybody pushes paper anymore, but maybe pushes emails or sits at a desk, because there must be people who are just doing behind the scenes back office work in Afghanistan and Iraq. But even they must have some experience that I would call traumatic. But you can only serve a limited number. They're finite resources. So, how do you feel about the enormity of the problem and the resources to help them?
Well, there's a Rand Corporation survey, I guess, in 2008, and they sort of estimated that I think it was 25% of the returning service members from Iraq and Afghanistan, at a minimum, have either traumatic brain injury, PTSD, or depression. And it may be the estimates may be even higher now. At a minimum, it's 25%, and what are sometimes referred to as hidden wounds or hidden disabilities. But not all returning service members seek help for those immediately, and typically there's kind of a lag time. So you can imagine a man or woman returns from overseas. They're eager to get on with their lives.
I will tell you, I have to interrupt to say our registrar tells the story of a service a veteran calling and saying, when can I start classes? And she has said, and when did you get back? And he or she would say yesterday.
Yeah.
So
that
yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, they're just so eager to get on with their lives, and and they've been in the service, and so they're very action oriented. Let's get on with it. Sometimes they have to jump right in, and then sort of discover that if they have chronic post-traumatic stress, for instance, that it's causing them problems in their work life or school life, or so sometimes it's a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more years later that they will come in for some assistance with it. So yeah, sometimes there's a lag time. So even as the war winds down in Afghanistan, we're going to be seeing veterans from these wars years later. Yeah.
And we should really talk about what anyone who's listening who would like to avail themselves of the assistance the Veterans Administration can offer. I mean, where would they go? What's the first point of contact? And what would you advise someone to do if they felt that they needed your services?
Walk in, go to eligibility. Fill out the eligibility paperwork. You can on either of the campuses. You can ask for the OEF/OIF coordinator,
which stands for?
It's Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom coordinator, and Operation New Dawn now, I should say, too. But
these two campuses are where?
Newington and West Haven.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So the purpose of the OEF/OIF coordinators is really to assist returning service members and new veterans to the system. You can also go to one of the vet centers in Connecticut.
And where are those?
West Haven, Rocky Hill, and Norwich. Yeah.
And what happens at those veteran centers? That they just can learn? I assume that there must be some mustering out, like the opposite of an orientation for all veterans, right? When you leave, do they give you a packet of information and say?
They do at the kind of the post-deployment things. There's a lot of information that the returning service members get. However, many are young. They're ready to get on with their lives. They want to get the heck out of there, go home, do whatever. And so they get a lot of information in a short period of time. How much that they actually digest is another matter. So, I've heard many veterans from Iraq, Afghanistan say, well, I know they probably told us that at some point, but, I didn't really absorb it all. Yeah.
Right. So they can go to these veteran centers and somebody will actually carefully tell them the information that they might need.
Vet centers are part of the VA system.
Okay.
There in Connecticut, you have the two hospitals in West Haven and Newington, and then you have the 3 vet centers. The vet centers are a little more, I don't know the term, laid back. I mean, vets can usually walk in. They can they're smaller, more accessible in some ways. They also, offer some evening groups and things like that. They're typically manned by veterans.
Yeah.
It's just two different means of services through the VA.
Well, I hope that anyone listening who has their own experience as a veteran or knows a veteran who might need some help or just some post-deployment orientation to the things that veterans can help them with. Well, we'll check into those veteran centers or the VA and try as best we can all try to learn more about post-traumatic stress disorder. I always want to say syndrome, and also the brain trauma, the
traumatic brain injury.
There's so many things that. I think that when we arm ourselves with information anyway, it helps us make better efforts to help the individuals to whom we owe a great deal.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would just tell all the vets and service members out there, help is available. If you need us, please avail yourself.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
They're good, and I hope to have you back on. I'm afraid that this is going to be a continuing issue, the working with the veterans, probably for the rest of our lives. So this has been the Middlesex Moments radio show, and I've been visiting today with Robin Gilmartin from the Veterans Administration. I hope if you are interested in learning more about Middlesex Community College, you'll check out our website at mxcc.edu. I'm Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, wishing you a good day.